Haiti. One half of the island of Hispaniola, this Caribbean nation is one of the most diverse nations on Earth. Visitors will find a unique cultural history, a beautiful landscape, and flavorful food. They'll also find a deep folklore that may hold some dark secrets. Haiti is one of the birthplaces of Voodoo, an African diasporic religion that combines worship of Yoruba gods and Roman Catholic saints. But it also has a reputation surrounding the supernatural, with legends surrounding possession, exorcism, and magical healing. Even possibly zombies. Zombies? Well, maybe not the ones you're thinking of. Most modern depictions of zombies have them as part of a fast-spreading plague. When someone gets bitten by the undead, they soon become a slow-moving, hungry monster themselves, seeking brains and to spread the plague. But these weren't the first zombies. The zombies first mentioned in Haitian folklore were the undead, but they weren't created by a virus. They were brought back from the dead by magic, usually to serve as a priest's slave. The fear of being turned into a zombie was widespread, and slave owners before slavery was abolished used to threaten their captives that they would be kept around as a zombie if they committed suicide. But this isn't possible, is it? The idea of raising the dead doesn't have any evidence in its favor. But another theory about the existence of zombies has gained attention. What if these undead weren't dead at all? What if they were captive, enslaved humans who had been turned into the living dead by alchemy, poisons, and maybe a little magic we didn't understand? It still seems rather far-fetched, except that there is one person who may have lived this nightmare. It was 1962 when a Haitian man arrived in a hospital deeply sick. He was identified as Clarvius Narcisse, and it soon became clear that he likely wouldn't be leaving. His fever got worse and he began spitting up blood. His condition deteriorated for a few days until he passed away, and things proceeded normally from there. His body was placed in the morgue and he was later buried, and that seemed to be the end of the story. But it wasn't, and 18 years later, it took a bizarre turn. It was 1980 and Angelina Narcisse had long ago mourned her brother and moved on with her life. She was shocked when a mysterious man arrived in the city of Leicester and proclaimed himself to be Clarvius. She had no reason to believe him until he told her his childhood nickname and proceeded to give her and other villagers information he would have no way of knowing if he wasn't who he claimed to be. But he had been dead and buried. What could explain this bizarre resurrection? The story he would tell was even stranger than his return. He had been buried, but he hadn't been dead. Clarvius assumed that he had undergone a mysterious illness that had left him completely paralyzed and appearing dead, but he was fully conscious as they buried him in the ground. Then, after he was given up for dead, he had been dug up from the ground and force-fed a mysterious paste by a bokar, or a witch doctor. The doctor had plans for him, and he was soon introduced to his new place in life, as a slave on a sugar plantation. But why didn't he escape? The bokar kept him and all the other slaves pacified with regular doses of this mysterious drug. It made him hallucinate, caused him to lose his memories, and kept him in a fugue state that he could barely remember, along with dozens of other captives. He couldn't even realize he was a prisoner and schemed to escape because his mind was no longer his own. The only saving grace? The witch doctor was immortal and no potion could fix that. Eventually, after 16 long years of slavery, Clarvius's enslaver died and there was no one left to give him the drug that took away his mind. The witch doctor's wife then fed salt to the enslaved and released them from the curse. Clarvius remembered everything and ran back to his hometown to find his family. With such a wild story, it's unlikely people would believe him, right? Surprisingly, no. Many people familiar with the stories around voodoo magic in Haiti were familiar with the legends around zombies and thought that his story was entirely possible. Complicating it, there were stories that those who violated the rules of society were more vulnerable to punishment of being turned into a zombie, and Narcisse was notorious for fathering children and abandoning them. He claimed his soul had been taken by the sorcerer, and even accused his estranged brother of masterminding his poisoning to get an inheritance. But one thing was sure, the villagers did recognize Clarvius Narcisse, and everyone was sure it was actually him, returned from the dead. The only question was, how? While stories like this may have circulated for centuries before, this was 1980 and news traveled fast. The strange story of Clarvius Narcisse reached foreign shores, and doctors wanted to investigate. The first to look into the case was Haitian psychiatrist Lamarck Touillon, who firmly rejected the idea of any supernatural influence. However, there were too many stories of zombies around Haiti for it to simply be a coincidence. He believed this was a case of poisoning and kidnapping, and there was just one unanswered question: how did Narcisse escape death? The hospital he had died in was operated by an American medical staff, and there were strong records of his decline, death, and storage for burial. Was there a poison out there that could simulate death itself? There was much debate, but one figure in particular emerged as a voice of belief. Wade Davis, a Harvard ethnobotany student from Canada, had devoted his studies to the unique properties of plants and how they're used in traditional medicine and religion. He studied the documents surrounding Narcisse's supposed death and communicated with Dr. Douillon. He knew he'd have to travel to Haiti to investigate this bizarre case personally. He soon developed a theory that was scary for how plausible it was. Davis's background in botany led him to believe that the chemical properties of plants could create a state that would duplicate the effects of supposedly supernatural zombies. He met with experts in traditional medicine, listened to stories of zombie folklore, and learned of a supposed zombie powder that was used to poison people. It had a bizarre list of ingredients, and it included pufferfish, lizards, a toad, and a dried sea worm, the species of several plants from Haiti, and material from a corpse. Davis spoke of how he witnessed the skull of a dead infant be used in the potion. However, he soon zeroed in on one ingredient in particular. Pufferfish are strange creatures which are a delicacy in some cultures, but they have to be eaten very carefully because parts of them contain tetrodotoxin. This highly potent neurotoxin is found in some of the most poisonous animals on Earth, and even a small amount can have a devastating effect. The fast-acting poison blocks the sodium channels in the nervous system, which keeps the signals between the body and the brain from transmitting. The victim is slowly paralyzed, with the poison eventually affecting the muscles that control breathing and killing them. There's no antidote, but people have recovered when medical help is available to keep them alive until the poison wears off. Could Narcisse's death have been a close call with tetrodotoxin? It's possible because someone can be exposed through many means, through ingestion, injection, through a wound in the skin, or even through breathing in a powder. It's not clear if Narcisse could have survived a near-death experience without medical intervention, but the symptoms were similar enough that Davis believed it was the likeliest situation. Bufotoxin, a toxin derived from toads, may have also been involved. Narcisse didn't waver from his story and the medical report seemed clear, but it didn't explain everything. How would someone be mind-controlled for 16 years? Davis soon came to believe that Narcisse's time as a zombie might have been related to another poison, one that can be found in many of our backyards. Datura, a poisonous plant known as Jimson weed, has a long history of being used as a hallucinogen and a poison. Many traditional religions took controlled amounts of this plant as part of religious rites, despite it being a gamble every time. The plant is psychoactive and can cause delirium, hallucinations, and even psychosis, and overdoses can cause death. Those who become intoxicated by it become unable to tell fantasy from reality. Could a consistent dose of this poison, administered by someone who knew how to avoid a fatal dose, keep someone in a perpetual state of delirium that would make them a zombie-like slave? Well, that depends on who you ask. Wade Davis's theory of the strange case of Clarvius Narcisse made him famous, and he soon published a book titled The Serpent and the Rainbow, which he claimed to be a true story of how a man was turned into a zombie. It became a bestseller and even turned into a horror movie of the same name by horror legend Wes Craven, although the movie fictionalized the case significantly and received mediocre reviews. But not everyone was buying Wade Davis's conclusion. Scientists studied Davis's theories about tetrodotoxin and found that there was very little evidence of the presence of the poison in the samples he brought back from Haiti. While in theory it could have had the effect he claimed, there have been no studies due to the extremely dangerous nature of experimenting with the poison. Likewise, there are no studies on the long-term impact or survivability of datura poisoning, and no other reports of people being kept in dreamlike states indefinitely. Kao and Yatsumoto, a pair of researchers who studied the case after Davis, believe that Davis had falsified many of his conclusions in order to write his book. He also was criticized for ethics breaches in his investigation in Haiti for taking extreme measures, like being involved in the exhumation of an infant corpse for making the powder. The case is debated to this day, and no one really has an answer to the question, do zombies exist? It turns out the answer is yes, but maybe only in the animal kingdom. In recent years, scientists have made some disturbing discoveries about organisms that can enslave other beings to their will. One such slaver isn't an animal at all, but a fungus. Massospora cicadina is a spore that has a very limited target, periodical cicadas that only emerge every 13 or 17 years. These spores can go dormant with the cicada and infect the abdomen of the insect. The spores eventually grow and take over the whole abdomen of the cicada, turning the back half of the insect into a chalky plug. As the cicada flies around, it spreads the fungus. Studies even show that the cicada drags its abdomen more than usual, making sure it sheds as many spores as possible. While the cicada is still alive, the fungus seems to compel it to do whatever it can to make sure it infects others. But this fungus isn't the only one that can create its own zombies. University of British Columbia researchers who were observing spiders discovered something disturbing when they noticed spiders abandoning their colony and spinning strange webs. They discovered that the spiders were infected with a parasitic larva of a Zatopoda wasp. These newly discovered wasps would lay an egg on the stomach of the spider, which would hatch and attach itself to the spider. As it grew, the spider would be compelled to spin a web around itself, containing it for the larva to consume before it was turned into an adult. These zombie spiders not only were made to do their bidding by the wasp, but to essentially commit suicide. Not the undead, but nature is scary. But did we ever get answers about what happened to Clervius Narcisse? After his brush with fame, Narcisse faded into obscurity and little is known about his latter days. He lived another 14 years after his shocking return, but he eventually took the secrets of his mysterious absence with him to the grave. And this time, it's unlikely the dead man will be telling any tales. For more on The Walking Dead, check out Could You Survive a Zombie Attack? And for more on unusual poisons, why not watch Death Apple, the most dangerous tree in the world?